Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in my tiny house on wheels and living a more intentional life. Whoop, I almost spilled the coffee there. A lot of you are concerned about the fact that I hold a full cup of coffee in most of my videos. I do drink it, but I just worry that you guys don't want to hear the slurping sounds. But just to prove it, I'm going to have a drink. And I will mute out the slurping sounds. Anyways, so if you watched my last video, my last couple actually, tiny house videos, you'll know that I was on Vancouver Island recently to look at a couple of potential parking spots, and I found one. I have also started the process, made a list and things like that of the things that I need to do before I can move this summer. So obviously I am going to be documenting everything to do with my move and the preparations for my move. But what I wanted to do today as the beginning of that series was to talk to you about how I went about finding my tiny house, my new tiny house parking spot, which actually applies, it's the same as how I found this tiny house parking spot. Sophie, you're gonna get your tail in my coffee. The number one question I get, how did you find your parking spot? Where are you parked? Are you parked legally? All of those things. Very good question, and definitely the number one concern that most people have, which is totally understandable. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the steps I went through to find my current spot and also my new spot, because my new spot is obviously different. Right now, I'm in a mobile home park. At the time that I moved into my tiny house, I had to be in Calgary. I was still going into the office. I still had an office job, which required me to be going into the office. So I had to be either in city limits or very close around city limits. When I approached the park manager for this mobile home park, I came with my blueprints that had the engineer's stamp on them. I came with printouts of the builder's website, specifically the pages that showed some examples of their builds and their certifications, because they are CSA and RVIA certified. And I also came with pictures of tiny houses that were similar to mine. My house is a gooseneck, sits on a gooseneck trailer, which is different than obviously a mobile home. And so I knew that if I could show them what it would look like, and whether your house is on a gooseneck trailer or not, but if you can bring pictures of, if your house isn't built yet, if you can bring pictures of a house that will be very similar in style and size, that will really help. Because as I always say, you want to make it easy for them to say yes. And in order to do that, they have to be able to visualize what they're saying yes to. So when I came prepared. I came, like I say, with my blueprints. I came with printouts from the builder's website. I came with pictures of what a gooseneck trailer tiny house looks like, so that I could show her, but also so that I could leave those with her, because she was going to have to talk to the head office in Vancouver and approve this. That really helped, because after I left, they looked at the blueprints, they looked at the pictures, and they got really excited about having the tiny house here in the park. They were able to see that it met the specifications for what was required to park here, because in the mobile home park, they did already have a park model, so they accepted park models. I knew that. The houses had to be CSA certified or RVIA certified if it's park model. So that made a big difference. And I think that if you come prepared, even if you haven't finished building your house, even if you haven't started building your house, come with drawings of what your house will look, of the layout of the house, come with pictures of houses that are similar if you have done a SketchUp model, or if you're working with a builder and they've done blueprints and elevations of the exterior. Send those to your potential new landlords to show them what your house is going to look like and get them excited about having your house. Because whether or not you're going to a mobile home park like I am, a year-round RV park, or private land, they're going to want to know what it is that they're accepting on their property. This little bum. So That's how I found this spot. But let me tell you about how I found my new spot. My dream has always been to move the tiny house out of Alberta. It's not that I don't like Alberta. I think Alberta's beautiful. In Calgary in particular, we're very close to the Rocky Mountains, and it's absolutely gorgeous countryside. However, the winters are long and very snowy and very cold. And I've always wanted to live in a more temperate climate, and I love British Columbia, and I love Vancouver Island in particular. So for those of you who don't know Canada, Vancouver Island is different than Vancouver the city. Vancouver the city is on the mainland in BC, British Columbia, and Vancouver Island is just off the coast. And it's a fairly large island. The capital city of British Columbia, Victoria, is on Vancouver Island. So I've always wanted to live there. It's one of my favorite places to go and visit. And the climate is a lot more temperate. It does rain more in the winter, but you don't have to shovel rain. So I'm all for that. So my goal was to find a parking spot that was on Vancouver Island, but I also was looking on the mainland. But one of my really strong wishes was that I was close to water, the ocean preferably, but if not, then a lake or a river of some sort. Water, because I really do love being close to water. So I started with joining Facebook groups, BC Tiny House Facebook groups, because they're a great resource. A lot of people are asking the same questions, and a lot of people are answering those questions. And also people who have land for rent for tiny houses will post them on those properties. So that was the number one resource I used. I also went to, there's multiple tiny house builders on the mainland and on Vancouver Island, and I went to their websites. Some of them will have pages on their websites for either tiny houses for sale or land for rent or for sale that you could park your tiny house on. Also, there is a group called Canadian Tiny House Alliance. I think that's what they're called. And they're an organization that's all about tiny houses and all about resources and information. Another great idea is to reach out to people who have farms, farm collectives, co-ops, organic farms, groups like that. And they often have Facebook groups or associations that you might be able to reach out to, advertise on. They may not be people that, landowners that had thought about having a tiny house on their land, but again, if you talk to them, it could be something that they're open to. And these could be quite beautiful spots for you to potentially park your tiny house on. You need to decide exactly what you need for your tiny house and be very, very clear when you're making the inquiries. So if you are able to be fully off-grid, so you don't need electrical, sewer, water, that sort of thing, you have more options for these one-of spots out in the country, on farms, orchards, things like that, because those landowners might be willing to rent to a tiny house, but they're less likely to have built the infrastructure for a tiny house. But in my case, I need electrical, I need internet, I need water and sewer. So when I did my search, here's what I did. Because I have a tiny house YouTube channel, I have a video tour of my tiny house. And because I've lived in my tiny house for 2.5 years now, I also have a lot of pictures of my tiny house, both inside and out. So whenever I approached a year-round RV park or a listing that I saw on, could you be more of a cat knocking stuff off? Oh my God. As I was saying, when I saw a listing on a Facebook group, when I saw a listing on one of the builders' websites, here's what I did. When I made my initial email inquiry, and I always did via email first, I introduced myself. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. I work from home full time. Here's what I have. I have a professionally built tiny house that is CSA and RVIA certified. I'm looking for a full-time spot. These are the hookups that I need. And here is a video tour of my tiny house so that you know what it is that I would potentially be bringing with me. And I found that the response I got from sending the tour video with my inquiries was amazing. People are excited to see a tiny house. Even the places that couldn't accept me, that didn't take tiny houses year round, or when the spots had already been rented, they were really excited about the tiny house. Almost always the response was, you know, I love your tiny house. It's so awesome. I really wish I had room for you. Or unfortunately, we've already rented that spot out, but you know, if the spot becomes available, I'll let you know. That was the response that I got. If I had just sent an inquiry and said, hey, is your spot still available? Why would I stand out from any other inquiry they had? The spot that I ended up taking, the one that I will be moving to, when I asked her how much interest they had in their spot when they posted it, she said that they were getting 3 to 4 inquiries a day. That's a lot. And you have to assume that any spot you see that's available is getting that kind of attention. But because everyone who has a tiny house is looking for some place to park it if they already didn't have their own property or a spot. So I had to stand out, and I made sure to make my house stand out, introducing who I am and what I do, and a little bit about the house, and then sending the video. Now, if you don't have a video tour of your tiny house, then send pictures. I would recommend taking a little video, just a quick video of the outside of it, maybe a walk around, a few shots of the inside so that they can see it. If not, then take pictures of those things. There's always the concern of that what they're going to get is ugly, horribly built, kind of falling down to pieces kind of a house. In order to make your inquiry stand out, you need to send at least pictures of your tiny house when you're making your inquiries. I wholeheartedly believe that that's what got me this spot, and that's what made me stand out and got me my new spot. Because they mentioned how beautiful that Serendipity is, and how much they were looking forward to having her on the property, that it was exactly what they were looking for, a nice house, because it would be visible. And that's what they wanted on their property. So that's what you want to show them. And if your house is professionally built, make sure you put that in the initial email inquiry. If it has certifications, if it's RVIA or CSA certified, if you live in a different country, your certifications might be different. But in Canada, those are the 2 certifications that would apply here. You want to put that in there, because again, what you're saying to the potential landlord is, my house was professionally built, so it's built to code, it's safe, so it's not going to blow up, catch on fire, hopefully, but it's safely built, and so therefore what they're getting on their property is a house that is built to some sort of code, and they have some confidence in how it's built. If you have pets, make sure you put that in that initial inquiry. If you have a bird or a cat, it's not that big of a deal. But if you have dogs, you're going to want to put that in that initial inquiry, because if they are dead set against them, there's no point in moving forward. Make sure you put in there, I have, this kind of dog, and very well behaved, very, very friendly, hopefully you're pet friendly. What you're doing by having your initial email inquiry be this fleshed out and have those visuals is you're making yourself and your house stand out from all of the other inquiries that these people are going to be getting. And I think that is critical in finding any tiny house parking spot. Say there is a specific place you really want to live. There's a certain county, a certain region, a certain town that you really want to live in. You could also approach it differently by basically marketing yourself and your house. I'm going to show you a visual of a flyer that somebody built when they were looking for their tiny house parking spot. I think it's brilliant. It's exactly what I was going to do if what I did wasn't yielding results. I had already thought about how I was going to do this. I was actually going to advertise online, in their local sort of papers or something like that. But it's also, you can also leave these as flyers, basically an infographic. That in what you're basically saying is, here's my house. Isn't it cool? Here's who I am. Wouldn't you love to have me on your property? And here's what I need. Please contact me. And what you're doing is generating interest in your tiny house, your situation. People think tiny houses are cool, even if they've got absolutely no interest in ever living in one. And even if they don't have any property to have one on there, they're interested in them. They will stop and read that, and they will pass it along to somebody who does have some property, who might be interested in renting out some land to somebody for their tiny house. So don't discount the old style form of just putting up some flyers and advertising in a paper, a local community paper or something like that. I seriously think that is a brilliant idea, especially if you're in an area where you don't know if anybody has a tiny house. Because a lot of tiny houses are on private property and nobody knows that they're there. And if you're in one of those areas where tiny houses are fairly new or they're fairly under the radar, this could be a great way to generate some interest, to start making some connections, is to basically put up flyers. Like I say, put them in grocery stores, put them in coffee shops, put them in church bulletin boards, community centers, rec centers, anything like that. Especially places like outdoor outfitters and organic markets and coffee shops. Places like that. I don't know why, and obviously I'm making generalizations, but a lot of tiny house people sort of are also very outdoorsy. Those sorts of places where you think that people who might be interested in an alternative sort of lifestyle might frequent, also great places to put flyers up for your tiny house. And definitely the local community papers often have online papers where you can post your ad online. Think of it as a marketing campaign for your tiny house, and I think that is a great way to find a potential new parking spot. And finally, I think that one strategy that's often overlooked is realtors and realtors' offices. There's a lot of realtors or rental agents that deal with rental properties, and including land. And they can be an excellent resource for you when you're looking to park your tiny house, especially if you're looking to park it on land, whether you're buying your land or you want to park it on somebody else's land. Go and talk to the local real estate offices of where you're thinking about parking. And especially, like I say, rental agents, because again, they deal with rental properties. And that is a resource that I think a lot of people don't think about, but can be very, very productive. I actually did talk to a lady who was a real estate agent, and she didn't have anything for me right then, but she was the one who recommended that I approach some farmers collectives and co-ops and things like that, because they, like I said earlier, have land and are often happy to rent pieces of it off for a tiny house. In those situations, you'll probably have to be more off-grid, but if that's something that you're willing to do, something that you're prepared to do, your house is built for, that can be really useful. Don't forget that real estate agents, rental agents, can be an excellent resource when you are searching for your tiny house parking spot. I hope that was helpful. Again, these are just my recommendations, some suggestions that I have, and some of the strategies I used to find both my parking spots. Yours may be different. If you actually live in your tiny house right now, please share down below how you found your spot, and maybe any suggestions that you have that I haven't thought of. That would be awesome. Sophie and I are very much looking forward to our move, and I have to get her ready for that. That's going to be something in itself. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, why not? Please subscribe. It's an awesome community here. Everybody is great, and we are always sharing advice and resources for everything tiny house and tiny living. So thanks for watching. Stay safe, and remember, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. I love you guys. I'll see you next Sunday.